Today, the topic of our lecture is descriptive theories of ethics. So, after discussing the normative theories of ethics, let's discuss the descriptive theories of the ethics. Descriptive ethics theories are describes how ethical decisions are actually made and what factor influence the process and the outcome of those decisions. So rather than telling us what people should do, which are normative theories, they seek to tell us what people actually do and why they do it. So descriptive theories basically provide a practical understanding of how the normative theories can be applied. So descriptive theories are the theories which tell tell us that how we will apply the or how we use the normative theories in a practical word or in a practical word in a practical way. Uh, Before discussing the descriptive theories of ethics, let's first and see that what is an ethical decision. What is an ethical decision could be. So let's see. An ethical decision is about right or wrong. Like we know already that we have to make decisions about some issue that it is right or wrong ethically. But morals suggest uh, by using the language of right and wrong, we have already identified a situation in moral is moral in nature. So when we are coming to that uh, point that we have to decide that it is right or wrong, we have already identified the situation. So there is an important process of identification that goes before this. So whereby we examine whether the situation is about a moral decision. So before reaching to this point, there is a process of examining the situation that it is a moral or it is ethical situation is rising or ethical situation is not rising. So how do we objectively decide whether a situation should be assigned moral status? So objectively how we will decide that it is a moral situation or it is a not a moral situation? So there are a number of factors we were going to consider. So to before reaching ethical decision, there is a point where we decide that it do it is a ethical situation is there or not. So it is very important, then we will make the decision. It is very important that we will see the factor which which are a part which are characteristics of an ethical decision or ethical issue. The decision is likely to have significant effects on other. So number one, if we are making a decision, it should have significant effects on the other. For example, copying an album does have material effects on others, namely the record label and the musician, etc. The decision is likely to be characterized by the choice. In that alternative courses of actions are open, moral decision requires they have a choice. So you should have more than one option to do to the decisions. Ethical dilemmas. So what are ethical dilemma? The decision maker has to recognize ethical choices. For example, if you copy an album accidentally, it is not ethical dilemma, but normally you have the choice to copy or not. So it is an ethical dilemma. If you have choice between doing a copy and not doing a copy, so when you are doing a copy, you are indulging some ethical dilemma or ethical. So it means you have more than one choice to do the thing or do the action. So decision is perceived as ethically relevant by one or more parties. For example, just because you copy an album without ever considering it to be an ethical decision, this does not mean that you are engaging in an ethical neutral act. So if you don't, for example, just because you copy an album without ever considering, when you are not considering that it is ethical decision, it doesn't mean that it is not ethical decision, because it is influencing on other parties as well. So you are not ethically neutral. Models of ethical decision makings. So descriptive models of decision making primarily seek to represent two things: the different stages in decision making people go through in responding to an ethical problem in a social context, and the different influences on the process. So there are two things we have to see, that uh, people to respond to an ethical problem in a social context. Social mean in a society, in a with the related to social things, and the different influences on the process, and when you are making the decision, what kind of influences you have on that process of deciding. So here let's discuss the different stages in decision making people go through in responding to an ethical problem in a social context. The social scientist James Rest introduced a four-stage process of ethical decision making. According to this model, individuals move through a process whereby they first of all recognize a moral issue, then make some kind of moral judgment about that issue, and establish an intention to act upon that judgment and act according to their intentions. So these are like four stages about any ethical issue we are going to decide. First of all, recognize an ethical issue. Is there any moral issue or not moral issue? If it's not moral issue, then the thing is going to stop there. Then make some kind of moral judgment about that issue. Then you make a judgment about that particular issue, if is right or wrong. Then establish an intention to act upon that judgment. Then you have intention to acting on that judgment or that statement you made, and then and act according to your intention. Then you act according to your intentions. So here let's discuss the this uh, moral functioning model, which has four components. Number one is the first is the awareness of the moral issue, then moral judgment you are making, and then moral commitment, and then moral action. So these are like total 12 points. So they are in the sequence and they are divided into four different parts. So number one, the question is this a moral issue situation? If is a moral situation, so state the situation. First of all, you have to state the uh, situation, make a statement about the situation. Notice the presence of core values. Is there any issue of fairness, caring, loyalty, authority, or sanctity of or integrity? So these are all things should be, one of the things should be there to have a moral situation. Then determine if a moral situation arises or not. So this is a moral situation. If our answer is that this is a moral situation, then we go to the next step. So then what is the moral judgment? What should one do? So analyze action of core value and consequences. So you see the, what is the, like we gave the example, if there is issue of fairness, if is a caring or carelessness, is fair or unfair, loyalty or betrayal, authority or responsibility, if you have authority or you don't have authority. Sanctity mean if you have to, you have follow the all the rules and regulation. And integrity, like you said, there should be no moral dishonesty or any kind of dishonesty in that. So analyze the action of the core values and consequences. So what will be the consequences if you will be taking a decision or a judgment like that? Decide what an ethical person should do. So you have to tell yourself that as ethical person, what should be my judgment. Then explain the core value that justify decision, and then you have to clarify upon what kind of values you take into consideration to make that decision. So this is basically justification of your moral decision. So so one should not cheat. You should be honest, and your decision or your judgment should be based on the reasons, or that should be justification. Then the next is moral commitment. So am I responsible? So number one is, I cannot even read that. Then decide what you should do in this situation. So and then check your integrity, expose rationalization. So rationalization means again is kind of justification that it is decision is rational, it has a justification or not. So then confirm, so decision prioritizing core value, then after that you confirm that your decision is on the right values, because you have to, and it depends again upon who is making the decision. So and your responsibility about taking the decision. And I should not cheat again, when you are making this decision, you shouldn't be cheating, you should be honest, and you are doing the decision according to your all the information you have, and your ethically and morally that issue should be right according to your judgment. Then is the moral action, what kind of skills and will are needed. So imply academic or technical skills, you should have all the skills to implement that decisions, including your academic and plus technical, and deploy social skills needed to act, and also your social skills, and then exercise your will to achieve with integrity. So again, you do all these things having your integrity. So this was the a model of functioning, a moral functionings. So and I will tell you, when you are doing a ethical project, you should keep this all in your mind and follow this model to reach to a decision. First of all, uh, awareness of moral situation, then you making a judgment about that, and then commitment about that morality which you are making the decision, and then finally you should have the skills and ability and capability to fulfill that decisions. After recognition that this is a moral issue, let's see what factor influencing the ethical decision making process. So model of ethical decision making generally divide the factor which influencing decision into two broad category. One is individual factors, another is the situational factors. So let's see what is the individual factors. The unique characteristics of individual actually making the relevant decision, that is your age, your gender, your education, your personality, your attitudes. So these all things are influencing your decision making. What is your age? If you are young, you are old, you are very young, or you are very old, and plus how much your education, what kind of education you have, and how much education you have, then your personality traits, personality attitudes, your attitude and behavior, all these things influencing on your decision making process. I will add to that, not only ethical decision making, any kind of any kind of decision makings, when you are doing these kind of factor influence on your decision making process. So then the next one is the situational factors, the particular feature of context that influence whether the individual will make an ethical or an unethical decision, reward system, job role, and organizational culture. So the next one is the, in which situation, in which context you are making that decision. It also influence your decision making issue. So I'm sorry, decision making process. So like reward system, if it's a fair reward system, then you may be doing the right, right decisions, that to whom should be you are rewarding, to whom should you are not rewarding, or it should be fair and it should be unfair, it should be nepotism, and then job roles, same thing, what kind of job roles you are playing, and then organizational cultures. So it depends also what kind of organizational culture. If your organization culture, or if your culture as a whole is very ethical, you are making the ethical decision. If you have pressures from the society to do unethical decisions, you may incline toward unethical decisions. So these all situational factors may influence your decision making, ethical decision making process. So two major things: your personality, your individuality, and plus the situation in which you are making the decision influence your decision making process. Individual factor influencing on the ethical decisions could be age and gender, national and cultural characteristics, education and employment, psychological factors like cognitive moral development and locus of control, personal values, personal integrity and moral imagination. So these are the few of the individual factors which could affect on ethical decision making process. So let's see the factors and their individual factors and their influence on the ethical decision making. Number one, age and gender. Very mixed evidence leading to unclear association with ethical decision making. There is evidence that age and gender influence on ethical decision making process, but it is not very clear, and they have a mixed evidence. So then the next one is the national and cultural characteristics appear to have a significant effect on ethical beliefs as well as view of the what is deemed as a acceptable approach to certain business issues. So nationally and culturally factors influence in our ethical decision making, particularly in business issues. Education and employment somewhat unclear, although some clear differences in ethical decision making between those with different educational and professional experience seem to be present. So education and professionalism uh, may influence the ethical decision making. Then there are some psychological factors, and number one is the cognitive moral development, small but significant effect on ethical decision making. We are going to discuss this in detail in the next slides. Then locus of control, at most a limited effects on decision making, but can be important in predicting the apportioning of blame or abbreviation. So it is very small significant importance, but it has very much importance in predicting that what kind of decision will be done. We are also going to discuss in this in the later stage. Personal values, significant influence, some empirical evidence citing positive relationship. So personal in integrity, significant influence likely, but lack of inclusion in models and empirical test. Moral imaginations, a new issue for inclusion with considerable explanatory potential. So these were the some of the individual factors which could affect our ethical decision making. So, like we have discussed while we are discussing the individuals factors influencing the ethical decision making. So, one of was the connective moral development. So there's a different level of reasoning that an individual can apply to ethical issues and problem. According to Kohlberg, there are three broad level of moral development. Level one is the pre-conventional. The individual exhibit a concern with its self-interest and external reward and punishment. So when we are making the decisions, the first thing individually thinks that it is for him or herself, and what kind of reward or the punishment he or she will get if they are doing this moral decision. Then level 2 is the conventional. The individual does what expected of them by others. So sometimes you do the decision according to the expectation of the people or the masses. Level 3 is post conventional. The individual is developing more autonomous decision making based on principle of right and justice rather than external influences. So the level third is you do decisions according to the principles and the justice and the principle of rights and justice, which we have already studied in the previous lecture. So these are the level third. So uh, this is the what I explained to you in the previous slide. This is kind of uh, a, a table to show that what kind of it is explaining more the cognitive moral development model. So Post-conventional is individual develop more autonomous decision making based on principle of right and justice, like we have discussed in the previous slides. And then universal ethical principle, following the universal ethical principles, social contract and individual rights. So like we have already discussed what is social contract is in the previous lectures, and individual rights. So we are considering the individual rights of the people and the rights of all the people while we are making this kind of ethical decision on in stage level 3. So level 2 is individual does, and the level 3 is the best, we should do the decision in that, in my opinion, and it is the height of connovative moral development. So like it levels, it shows the level 3. Then it is a conventional, individual does what expected them from others. So you come under pressure, or you want to become a good person, so you do the decision which is liked by majority of the people, so you go with the majority. So social accord and system maintenance, so you do that according to the social society, and you want to maintain the system or status quo, or the things which are the smooth running. So then pre-conventional is the individual show concern for self-interest and an external reward. So this is basically the first stage or first level of the your connovative moral development. So you are just thinking about, like we have studied in the descriptive ethics theory. So in that we are just is like egoism, or the things like what interest you, what is beneficial for you. So instrumental purpose and exchange. So and that obedience and the punishment. So if there is a punishment for that, you will be do like that. If it's reward, so your decisions are driven by the punishment and reward. We can divide our connovative moral development into two levels also. One is like pre-conventional and other is conventional. So in pre-conventional we are thinking like stage is obedience and punishment, or uh, instrum and instrumental purpose and exchange. So in the explanation is that individual define rights and wrong according to expected reward and punishment from authority figures. So you do, whilst this type of oral reasoning is usually associated with the small children, we can also see the business people frequently make unethical decisions because they think that their company would either reward it or let go unpunished. Number then instrumental purpose and the change is individuals are concerned with their own immediate interest and defined right according to whether there is a fairness in the exchange or deals they make to achieve those interests. So illustration, like an employee might cover for the absence of a co-worker so that their own absence might subsequently be covered for in return. You scratch my back and I will scratch your back is a reciprocity thing, is that if I do some favor to you, you will do the favor to me. So our decisions are based on our own interest. Then the second level is the conventional, interpersonal accord, conformity and mutual expectations. So in this individuals live up to what it is expected of them by their immediate peers and those uh, close to them. So an employee might decide that using company's resources such as telephone, the internet and email for personal use whilst at work is acceptable because everyone else is doing this in the offices. So they are just following the normal things what is happening there. So then social accord and system maintenance, individuals consideration of expectation of others is broadens to social accord according more generally rather than just specific people around them. So a factory managers may decide to provide employees benefit and salary above the industry minimum in order to ensure that employees receive wages and conditions deemed accepted by the consumers pressure groups and other social groups. So you have to take consider the all the stakeholder to while you are doing the this moral decisions. Of course, there's some criticism on this cognitive moral development. The most notable criticism of cognitive moral developments are the theory was developed in the non-business context. Gender biases are there more on men. So implicit value judgment, it privileges rights and justice above numerous other bases of morality. Kohlberg has interjected his own value judgment regarding the moral, most ethical. In variance of stages, people use different moral reasoning strategies in different time and different situations. So you cannot divide the things into different stages, because people can use different stages at different stages at different time and different situations. So, and it is mostly for the men, not for the women, and plus it is done in the non-business context. There is not much uh, related to business decisions. And then implicit value judgment mean it privileges rights and justice above numerous other basis of morality. So they have considered only rights and justice. They should consider other right principles to do the decision. So these are the few of the criticism of cognitive moral development. So how cognitive moral development, the way you think, how your way of the thinking, uh, influence your moral decision or ethical decision making. Next individual factor which is influencing your ethical decision making process is locus of control. So what is locus of control? The extent to which you believe that you have control over the events in your life. So this is called locus of control. So how much control you have over your situation and over your life, over the things you are doing, is called locus of control. Someone with a high internal locus of control believes that events in their life can be shaped by their own efforts. They might be expected to more likely to consider the consequences of their action for others, and may take more responsibility for their action, whereas someone with a high external locus of control believes that the event tend to be result of the action of other and luck or fate. So there are two things. One, some people, they think that anything they have achieved or anything they can do it for with their own efforts. There's nothing, no one else is responsible for that. They don't even give the credit to other and always not give the responsibility or blame to someone. But on the other side, if you external locus of control, you will think that, oh, and it is sometime if you do yourself, you say, oh, I did it. But if things are not happen, you will say it is you blame to the other people. So these are like two way of thinking, and this way of thinking also influence your ethical decision making process. This is a pictorial representation of internal locus of control and external locus of control. So if you see internal locus of control, they are like they are active people. I make things happen. So their slogan is their punchline is I make things happen. So I can determine my own future. My passion and hard work help me achieve my goals, and I am in control of my life uh, and its direction. So they think they are in total control. So internal locus of control mean they are in total control, whereas external locus of control, they are passive. Things happen to me. They say, things happen to me, this happened, that happened. So there is nothing I can do about my future. Things are, I just don't do anything, just things are happening to me. uh, why bother trying? Whatever is meant to happen will happens. So I go with the flow. Sometimes we think like that, I will go with the flow. Luck, fate and religion control my future. So we all our control is depending on our luck and fate and society and the other things. So this is, I hope you understand the difference between internal locus and of control and external locus of control. And this your belief also influence on the way you do the ethical decision making. And after discussing the individual factors, let's now discuss some of the situational factors which we have mentioned earlier. Some of the organizational factors are can affect, influence participants' behavior, how you make the decision in an organization. One of the key sources of organization influence is the degree of commitment of organization leader to ethical conduct. So all the employees of a particular organization look upon the top management, that how they are making decision. If they are making decision ethically, they will do the decision ethically. This commitment can be communicated through a code of ethics, policy statements, speeches, and publications. So there's a code of conduct there, so they have to follow it if the organization is asking them to follow. So their all decisions are according to the code of conduct, which is written in a policy statement of an organization or a corporation. Another situation factor could people may behave unethically in a certain situation because they may see no way out. So they don't have any other option. So, for example, a manager may record fictitious sale in order to cover losses within his area of responsibility. For example, if he cannot achieve a target, so he will put the fictitious sales in his or her count. So this is another way, when you are under pressure, so you have to do some ethical situation too for your survival. So this is another situation. After giving some examples, we can divide situational factor influencing on decision making into two main categories. One is issue related factors, and other is to the context related factor. Let's see what they are. Issue related factors are the differences in the importance we attach to ethical issue. So issue related, it depends on the intensity or the framing of the issue. So and we do according decisions according to this. So let's see what is moral intensity and moral framing is. Moral intensity, it is like I told you in the previous slide, that how important the issue is to the decision makers. So the intensity of an issue will vary according to six factors. Magnitude of consequences, that expected sum of the harms or benefit for those impacted by the problem or action. So it is the magnitude or the amount of consequences or the sum of harm or sum of benefit. Then social consensus, the degree to which people are agreement over the ethics of the problem or action. Moral intensity is likely to increase when it is certain that an act will be deemed unethical by more. So you will go with the people's wish, the majority, what majority is saying. So that is like social consequences. If you do some decision and their social consequences are very disturbing, so you don't do that thing. Like we have also same thing in the individual things. So probability of effect, the likelihood that the harms or benefit will happen. So what kind of like in the magnitude, so same thing is here. So what will be the that is like a magnitude, and here is the probability of effect. It will affect or it will not affect. Is the likelihood that the harms or the benefit will happen. So and then temporal immediacy is the speed with which the consequences are likely to occur. With long-term consequences, the moral intensity will be much lower. So if your decision is doing right away effect, so you will do the right way. If their effects are coming on the longer time, then maybe its intensity is not so much. Proximity, the feeling of nearness of the decision maker. For example, working condition in one own country might be experienced as more intense. So the things which are closer to you, you will feel more. If things are away from you, so you don't feel much intensity. Then concentration of effect, the extent to which the consequences of action are concentrated heavily on a few or lightly on many. For example, stealing from someone with £100 is more, €100 is more intense than stealing from someone who owns millions. So this is another, so how much damage it will do to some particular people. The example is that if you have only 100 pound and someone steal you, it will be harm you more. But if you have million, 100 pound is nothing. 100 euro is nothing for you. Okay, the next is the moral framing. What is that? Our belief and action are largely shaped by what we see around us. The way moral issues are framed is key influence on ethical decision making. The most important aspects of moral framing is the language in which moral issues are coached. In this is basically how we draw the how we picture the a moral issue is also influence on our decision making. Using moral language like honest, fairness will more likely trigger moral thinking because these terms are attached to the existing connective categories that have more moral content. So manager create moral talks out of concern regarding perceived threats to harmony. They believe that the moral talk would disturb organization harmony by provoking confrontation, recrimination, and finger pointing. So managers create moral talk out of concern regarding perceived threats to the harmony of the company, then efficiency of the company, and the images of power and effectiveness. So they create moral, they frame the moral issue like this, that it will if to avoid the harmony and efficiency and the effectiveness of the company. So they felt efficiency. They felt that moral talk could cloud the issues and make decision making more difficult, time consuming, and inflexible. Image of power and effectiveness. They felt that their own image might suffer since their being associated with ethics could be seen as the idealistic and utopian and lacking sufficient robustness for the effective management. So usually business people do like managers are doing this. Managers create moral talk out of concern regarding perceived threats to their uh, objective. After discussing issue related factors, let's talk about the context related factors. Context is the circumstances that form the setting for an event, statement, or idea in terms of which it can be fully understood. So it is the circumstances surrounding that issue. The social context is on which and we are living, especially the expectations and demand placed on us within the social environment that are likely to influence our perception of what it is the morally right action to take. So this is the conditions under which we do the under which we make the decisions. So in context related issues, one of the issues is the social issue. Combination of demographical, religious, racial, diversities, and social capital peculiarities that characterize the task environment of a third sector organization. One of the three levels of analysis to frame a research objective with focal point are here are the different dimensions of social context. So basically is interactional, rational, group related, and organization, and how these dimensions affect actors' practice of use of artifacts. The social context passes an entire activity system in which the information systems are operated. So it includes the integration of subject, the object, the tools, the community, the rules, and the division of the labor. So basically this is the definition of social context. So social context could be multifacets things. They are demographic, religionally, racial diversity, and social capital particularities that characterize the task environment of a third sector. So task environment is also we study in the uh, uh, organizational studies that what is the task environment. Task environment is that environment which directly influence a organizational workers. So one of the three levels of analysis to frame research is the one of the three of the levels of the analysis. So then focal points are here are different dimension of social context, that is internal, inter and actional, then relational, then group related, and organizational. So these are like four different type of we do one to one, then we do top to top, and then we go in the group, and then in the organization. So these are all how we these dimension affect actors practice use of artifacts, how we use our organizational culture to react or interact with among ourselves. So then social contact passes an entire activity system in which the information system operate. So this is also, like we how the information are exchanging among in a social group. So like grapevine, or information system operates. This is in IS or IT, like in the organization, but in social society, we give from one person to another. So how the informations are spreading, or going from one to person to another. It includes the integration of subject, the object, and the tools, and the community rules, and the division of labor. So these all integrated integration of subject, who is doing what they are doing, what kind of tool you are using, what are the community, what are their rules and regulation, and how their labor is divided, that who is doing what in a society. So these all things also influence on our ethical decision making. So some of the context related factors are system of reward and punishment, which we already talked about. Authority, what kind of authority you are, bureaucracy, how the offices are working, then what kind of workload you have, and then organization norms and culture, and national and cultural context. Okay, let's summarize that what we have, studies in contest and issue related factors. So if we types of factors are issue related, so moral intensity and moral framing. So reasonable new factor, but evidence suggests that significant effect on the ethical decision making. So moral intensity, since even it is a new discovery or new things in this ethical decision making, but it still have a significant effect on ethical decision making. Then moral framing, fairly limited evidence, but existing studies show the strong influence on some aspects of the ethical decision making process, and most probably moral awareness. So moral framing shows that how much aware we are about the ethical issues are. Then the next is the context related factors. So the one is reward, some strong evidence of relationship between reward, punishment, and ethical behavior, although other stages it in ethical decision making has been less investigated. So then authority, good general support for a significant influence from immediate supervisor and top management on ethical decision making of the subordinate. Then if you have authority, you can make a you can make the you have influence on the making ethical decision about your subordinate. Then bureaucracy, significant influence on the ethical decision making, well documented but actually exposed to only limited empirical research. Hence specific consequences for ethical decision making remains contested. So it is not fully clear, and it is still controversial. So work roles, some influence likely, but lack of empirical evidence to date. So we have some influence of work roles, but it lacks the empirical experimental practical evidence of to the date. Organizational culture, strong overall influence, although implication of relationship between culture and ethical decision making remain contest. Still, you can argue about that. National contest, limited empirical investigation, but some shifts in the influence likely. There is still some influence on the national of national contest on the ethical decision making. So like I discussed in the previous part of my lecture, that framework for understanding ethical issues. So individual factors are recognizing moral issue, making moral judgment, and then establishing moral intent, and then engage in the moral behavior. So these are all individual factors are inflecting on that. And sometimes if you have a less sensitivity, maybe you will not even recognize this is a moral issue. If you have not properly, you have a judgmental skills, education, age. Maybe if you are young, you maybe do quick decisions, you are not taking all factor in your consideration. But if you are like a matured person, a learned person, maybe you will make a better moral judgment. Then maybe intent is another thing. It is also depend on your personality, that what you are saying and what is actually your intention is. And then how moral behavior, what kind of moral behavior you have. And same thing is, like we have discussed, situational factor is also there to affect your process. After discussing all the ethical decision making models and their factor influencing on that and how they are influencing, still these models have limitations. There are some limitation to the model. It is not always straightforward to break down these various elements into discrete unit, distinguish unit. You cannot break these units, I'm sorry, these factors or these elements into separate units. So it may be combination of lot of other things to when you are making ethical decision. It should be, could be personally, individually, it could be situational, it could be issue related, it could be social related. So all things are together when you are making the decision. Many of them are related and perhaps even interdependent. Yes, they are related and they may be depend upon each other. Ethical decision making models have largely originated in US, and this can sometimes give a national or cultural biases to types of issue and consideration that might be included. Research on the individual factors influencing ethical decision making has a strong Northern American biases. So while situation factors have been subject to lengthy debate, principle originated by European authors. So in my opinion, the first is that in this thing we try to tell you the different factors, how we are doing these decisions. Normatic theories, according to normatic theories, that how we are doing the ethical decisions. There are a lot of factors which we already discussed in detail. So but it is a combination of all these factors, and your personality, your situation, your cognitive moral development. So all these things are get together to influence on your ethical decision making in a situation. So I hope you understand, you have got some idea that how we make the ethical decisions in a situation, and you also judge, examine your own ethical decision you are making, and then you say why you did that, so you have a better idea that how we are making these decisions. So this is it for today. So if you have any question, please let me know, so I will be glad to answer those questions. Thank you.